We wanted to discuss some disturbing attacks on the press and free speech happening around the globe. In the last few days, Russia's oldest human rights organization was forced to close. Since then, another human rights group has been shut down as authorities crack down on Russian rights groups, independent media, and opposition supporters.
Also on Christmas Eve in eastern Myanmar, government soldiers allegedly carried out a brutal attack on civilians. At least 30 women and children were reportedly killed when soldiers bombed a convoy of refugees. Survivors of the initial attack were reportedly then burned. The UN has called for accountability and an immediate end to violence in the country, but hasn't taken any specific actions.
And in China, hundreds of Hong Kong's national security police raided Stand News, an independent media outlet, arresting 6 people. Stand News announced after the raid that it would close, adding that their staff would no longer speak to the press. Police also froze nearly $8 million in assets and seized, quote, subversive articles in the raid, according to officers at a press conference. Board members, a deputy assignment editor for the outlet, and Hong Kong Journalists Association chairman were among those arrested by police at their own homes. So this is a bad series of stories. Obviously, human rights, press freedoms, very important, in retreat. And we're not. We always want to be careful here. We're not claiming the U.S. has this sterling, wonderful track record of human rights or press freedoms. Our government is currently trying to, bring Julian Assange here for punishment for having, engaged in journalism and shared the horrific news of the horrific things the U.S. government was doing. That said, there are other countries that are more totalitarian, that are more brutal, that have a lot of worse things going on that are worth spotlighting. So, that's why we're doing that.
Yeah, the Myanmar issue is almost separate, and because it's such a complicated issue, and that's a country in very much a lot of turmoil and a lot of war and stuff going on there. But definitely with Russia and Hong Kong, what we're seeing are these governments that they don't tolerate dissent or any sort of criticisms. As our government is showing to not do well with that as either, as you mentioned. But definitely those countries, China in particular, is very much a one narrative nation. Mm-hmm. You're not really allowed to have outside thinking. It's a very collectivist society. Russia is also more collectivist. When you have these collectivist societies that believe that they operate as one, that they do what is best for everybody in the country, that they don't value individual freedom in that collectivist style of society. And so, they crack down when they say, well, you're misinformation, or you are, in the case of Hong Kong, there's a lot of accusations that there are Western, and it may or may not be true, I don't know, but what they're cracking down on is they're claiming that a lot of these are Western bad actors, influences, like CIA influences that are coming in and then setting up shop or influencing news or, trying to rile people up. And so they make that accusation, rightly or wrongly, and then they shut it down. Obviously, the downside of that is they can often be wrong on who they're targeting and claiming are being influenced by outside bad actors, right? We see that in this country when they say, Russian disinformation campaigns. And so then they want to shut down anybody and everybody they think is connected to a Russia disinformation campaign. That is what's going on in Hong Kong. And the government there, and also what's going on in Russia. They're claiming the same sorts of things. They're saying, well, you're part of a this whole disinformation campaign that every country feels like they need to shut down on. The outside influences of bad foreign actors, giving disinformation through a variety of different vehicles into the country. And that's a very dangerous precedent to be going down. And we're not helping because we're over here in this country engaging in it.
Yeah, and we, the U.S. has engaged in inappropriate interference in other countries' affairs in South America. Our intelligence operations there have been really awful in a lot in
Yeah, it's not a far-fetched claim, right? I mean,
it's
for
not
these
a far-fetched
countries
claim.
to say, right.
But it's also, but also we want to provide, appropriate vocal support to the kind of independence and freedom that places resisting. I don't want us to resist militarily to do any of that kind of interference, but we're allowed to say no. Freedom is good. China and Russia should be more free. Their governments are bad. Their attempts to break places like Ukraine and other bend them to their will is not good. But then I don't know. There's nothing we can really do about it. Is the frustrating thing, because we're not going to we're not going to, and we shouldn't, have World War III with either China or Russia over these things. So if you're not going to have World War III with them, what can you actually do to discourage them? Not all that much. They correctly call our bluff, right? They say, well, the U.S. is going to complain about this, maybe play around with some sanctions, but sanctions just, make our people poorer and more reliant on us anyway. So why would we care about that? So at the end of the day, we can't really do anything.
Right. We can't really engage in any sort of warfare, be it actual military aggression or sanctions. But the thing that we can do, is recognize what it is and not do that in our own country, starting with us. We can stop this whole narrative of, we have to stop these disinformation campaigns and these bad actors, and we need to start silencing, and we need to start fact checking and labeling and removing anything that we think is going to be, backed by the Russians or whoever it is. We need to start at home, and we need to recognize that we are marching ourselves towards that one narrative nation, that one narrative, authoritarian, totalitarian narrative. You can only accept this one narrative in this country. And if you're outside of this narrative, then you are labeled misinformation. You will be deplatformed. We need to start at home and have a value system and a moral system in this country that says, no, we want to hear all the information. We will decide for ourselves. It doesn't matter where that information is coming from. I don't care if it's coming from Russia or China, or if it's coming from my crazy uncle, right? What does it matter? I can listen to the information and then decide for myself what I want to believe. And we have to start with that mentality here at home, and then then we could be a pillar of morality, I suppose, and we could say, see, be more like us. Again, not doing anything militarily about it, but at least having the authority and the ability and not being hypocrites.
Yeah.
That's what we could do.
We really have to put our own house in order, and, we have to reflect on how poorly our efforts to, improve the climate of democracy and freedom in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, et cetera, how colossally all of those efforts failed. So we have to learn from that and, not do that sort of thing. And really that was the only zone of the world where we could have those actual experiments where we send in troops, where we kill people to accomplish this, and it didn't work, or it came at it barely worked, or came at a cost that we understand now we would never want to pay again, and wouldn't have paid if we could go back in time and change it. So that that's something we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, but definitely would like to see a more free world, free society. We definitely would like to see these atrocities stop, especially in Myanmar. It's a mess there. It's terrible what is happening.
Yeah, like you said, that situation is very messy and complicated. The president was deposed by the generals,
military.
by the military, and the military is is sort of fostering a genocide against the Muslim minority in the country. But the president was also not all that friendly to the Muslim minority, so it's a really bad position for them. And there was a lot. I know only something about it because when I wrote my book about social media, the Facebook's impact in Myanmar was pretty significant. It's like the entire internet there. And the generals were using Facebook to kind of to post really vicious hate speech against the Muslim minority, and Facebook didn't really do anything about it because they didn't have anyone working at the company at the time who understood the language. And also then they have to make really difficult calls about this is what these people are doing wrong, but they're the official government of the country. So do we silence the official government? This isn't some fringe terrorist group. This is the actual government. So anyway, it's a horrible situation, and we're hoping for more a rise in press freedom and human rights in 2022. So that would be nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have more rising coming up next.